Today we are going to be starting our sourdough bread. The only ingredients you need are your flour, starter, salt, and your filtered water, whatever water you want to use. Our starter has been rising overnight. It's been about 14 or 15 hours now. It's pretty bubbly, looks healthy and ready to be used. So we will start with our big mixing bowl. I use glass. I think that it controls the temperature better than plastic. The breads that I used to make in plastic bowls would go flat pretty easily. I don't know why, but glass seems to do better. So we will zero it out. The first thing you need is 50 grams of this starter. Close enough. And then we'll zero it again. And we'll add 350 grams of water. Okay, close. Then your next step is to combine the starter in the water. So just mix it around until they blend together pretty well. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it's not super clumpy anymore. All right, so it kind of just looks a little milky. Next, we'll zero out again. Whatever salt you want to use, I just use whatever fine salt I can find. The coarse salt, sometimes you bite into a piece of bread and it's a big chunk of salt, which I guess maybe with the right amount of butter would taste good, but most of the time it doesn't. This time you can do between 10 and 15 grams of salt. I always do 15. I think it tastes better, a little more salty. And then the last one is 500 grams of all-purpose flour. Wow, I'm so good. And then we'll just mix. So the first time you do this, the recipe says to mix it into a shaggy ball, which is kind of like this. Nothing too crazy either way, just combined. This time, sometimes you get flour on the edges. You can kind of see it there. That's not really combined. What I do is once I mix it as much as I can, I scrape the edges with my fingers. You can kind of see it. I scrape the edges with my fingers to try and get everything in it as much as you can. There's your shaggy ball. Okay, so now you have your ball. Set a timer for an hour and cover it. I cover with a plate because this seems to work best for holding in the moisture for me in there. Some people can use a damp dish towel and that works for them, but it seems to dry out too much too quickly in our house. So a dinner plate over top seems to work perfectly for it. So now we'll set an hour timer and then be back to fold it. Okay, so it's been an hour since we made our dough. I just take a fork and pull from the outside and push into the middle and spin like this until you've done it all once. Then it is good. Now it's more in a ball than last time. Cover it back up, set a 30-minute timer, do it again, and then let it sit for 12 to 24 hours before you bake your bread. Okay, now we are ready to start baking our sourdough. It has been rising for about 12 to 13 hours. It's nice and airy and bubbly. You could let it sit overnight if you wanted, I think I've seen people wait up to 3 days before they bake it, just keeping it in the fridge once it rises to let it get more of that sourdough flavor. But I'm just gonna do this one today. So we have our bread dough that we've made. We have our parchment paper here, more flour. This is my scorer. It's fancy if you don't have one or don't want to buy one. Ta-da. A knife works just as fine. And then we've got the Dutch oven in the oven, preheating to 450. So you want the Dutch oven to preheat in the oven while you prep your bread. The one that's in the oven is a 3-quart. I prefer a 5 or a 6-quart, but they were stuck together and I couldn't pull them apart. So this is what we have. So first we will get our surfaces clean and we'll flour it, and we'll work on scooping as much of the dough off of the bowl as we can. Now we'll put it on the flour. You can try and grab as much out of the bowl if you want, or just leave it. It's not too crazy. So now it's a little sticky, so we'll flip it so everything gets a little flour. It's not sticking when I touch it now. I'm going to take it, pull, fold over, and then turn it a little bit. And then same direction, I take it like this, pull it out, fold it over. Again, pull it out, fold it over, and I think this was my last side that I hadn't done yet. So now it's kind of in a ball, but this side you can see is the side we've been working on. I'll grab some more flour and lay it down on the parchment so it doesn't stick once we're done. And then I go the yucky, like the ugly side. I'll bunch it all together like that. And I just keep grabbing it and twisting it until I can get it to look somewhat like a ball. I'm sure there's prettier ways to do this, but I don't really care. So you can see there's some little bubbles. He's here. It's pretty smooth on the top. The bottom is more in a ball now, where the opening is. It's still kind of a ball. So I will put it down like this. Looks good enough. Nice and bubbly. And then the next step is I'm going to put more flour and do whatever design you want. You can do 1 cut, 7 cuts, 29 cuts, I don't care. Whatever you like. And now this gives it space to break open as it's baking. So it just keeps it looking a little bit prettier. For the final proof that some people like to do, I don't always do this, but I'll put a paper towel down in here just to cover the dough from the parchment. And I'll put the parchment with the dough in here. So it's like that. And then I'll cover it. They say to do this part, leave it covered at this stage for about an hour. Sometimes I don't do it, sometimes I do it, sometimes I do it for 20 minutes. It just mostly depends on how much time I have that day. Okay, so our oven is up to temperature at 450 degrees now. Our bread is still in here, looking about the same. I think our house is too cold right now to grow as much as it needed to, but it is what it is and we're just gonna go with it. So I'm going to start with the oven. Now, if you take your bread in the parchment. It's kind of like a sling. You can place it in pretty quickly and easily, and then throw the lid on, and that will go in for 20 minutes. So it has been 20 minutes now. So all we're gonna do is take the lid off, close it back, and start another 20-minute timer. After 20 minutes, you can start checking every couple minutes to make sure it's not burning. But it could be done at 20 minutes now or in about 30 minutes, but it really shouldn't take longer than 30 minutes from taking the lid off to be ready. I take the lid off and leave it in the oven just for safety, since there's kids everywhere and I don't want anybody to get burned. And it just feels safer to me in there, but it doesn't have to stay in the oven. So anyways, this has 20 minutes in the oven, and then I'll be checking it until it looks like it's fully cooked. So it's done baking now. Probably a minute or two overdone because I forgot and got distracted. Whoops. But it still looks pretty good. You can kind of see it there. So my next step is to let it sit on the oven for probably 10 minutes or so, just so the bread cools off a little bit so I can pull it out. But your bread's done.